Hi friends, my name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Happy New Year's to you. If you had a New Year's Eve celebration, I hope it was an enjoyable one and a safe one. And I hope that everything that you wish 2019 to be, I hope that everything that you wish for 2019 is beneficial for the planet and for yourselves and everyone else. So we always have this little sort of tradition here where we, this is just a personal one, where we, at midnight, we sort of, it's nothing exciting. I imagine people might find this quite boring, but we like to sort of do these good wishes of various kinds for the world and for other people and animals, etc. And so we run through various wishes that we have. For example, you know, we think about other civilizations, other species on other planets, because according to science, there's probably billions of planets just like, not like this one, but that have species on them in the universe. And so, you know, we have good wishes that they have harmonious interactions with one another and that there's peace and, you know, that they're happy. And then we wish, you know, for the people in Yemen, may that situation be rectified soon, and that there is plenty for everyone to eat, and there's peace in that country, and that those who are creating the conditions for that country and all those people to be starving, may they wake up and realize what they're doing. May they have some sort of internal, personal revelation of what they're doing, and start to turn it around in themselves. And we have that wish also for all those in positions of power, that they awake to the abuses that they're doing, that it truly affects them internally. They realize how awful that all is, and that they, you know, sort of are personally affected by it, and then decide to stop abusing power. You know, we basically have a whole lot of wishes for, rather than, you know, sort of even otherizing people who are abusing power. They're all human beings, and unfortunately they've lost their way, and they have become sort of a bit like in the Lord of the Rings, you know, sort of completely obsessed with power, to the point where nothing matters, and it turns them sort of ugly inside. And that's really what's happened to a lot of people, and unfortunately, you know, that are in power, and that and it's created all sorts of terrible chaos and violence for a lot of people all over the world, and more often than not, people who are the most vulnerable. Just like we do to non-human animals, we exploit and kill them because we can, because they're vulnerable and they can't fight back against us. And so we dominate and domesticate and kill them at a rate of 1 trillion land and aquatic animals every year. So that's a sort of a tragedy, and it's completely unnecessary because we don't need animal products to survive. So as a vegan, and as vegans, you know, here we say we have got lots of good wishes for that this planet wakes up to what we're doing to non-human animals, and that we become a vegan planet, and that we not only stop exploiting them, but we stop, via animal agriculture, we stop destroying the planet, and that's what we're doing. Because of animal agriculture, we're causing tremendous violence to the planet, to land and to the oceans and so forth. So, you know, we also need an internal revolution in ourselves individually to cease exploiting these wonderful sentient beings whose only crime, in quotes, is that they happen to be born onto this planet as another species. So that's something that we wish for, and I hope more people wish for that, but of course wishes aren't enough. We have to do something in our daily lives to make that change in a nonviolent way, of course, and education is so important. I believe education is a very, very important thing. So vegan education is very important to me, and spreading independent news about the war, the genocide in Yemen, spreading independent news about the apartheid situation for Palestinians. All that kind of thing is incredibly important. Wishes are great, but action is also important. That's Rooney. He's got a little bird be safe collar on. It's a very bright collar to alert birds. Just in case you're wondering if we like to dress our cats up, no, we don't. So we had we went through a whole list of things. It probably took us about 3/4 of an hour to get through the list. We just kind of was free form sort of thing from what we could think of at New Year's Eve, and we like to do that. It's a great way to start off the New Year's, sort of having good thoughts for peace and having good wishes for everyone, no matter if they're people who dislike us or people who or people in power. Also good wishes for the people who care about us. Wishes for a long, happy, healthy life, and that everything we do is of benefit to others. And that we try to be less critical of others. Of course, you know, critical if it's constructive and it has a good motivation behind it. Motivation is everything. You know, if we have good motivation, I mean, of course, people that do really awful things, sometimes they think they have good motivation. That happens, you know, but anyway, but it turns out that it's not. But I don't think anybody particularly wakes up every morning rubbing their hands together like that villainous character on The Simpsons. His name escapes me, Mr. Burns. You know, but I think that everybody thinks, in some ways, or most people think that they're doing what they're doing is okay. Anyway, so, you know, motivation is everything, and if we try and have good motivation for everything we do. I'm not trying to sound preachy or sort of religious-y or anything, but this is sort of just my own personal thing, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt if you like. I just find it's a great way to start the New Year's, is having these sort of thoughts about others, about other planets that may have, you know, may have different species on them, and all that kind of thing. Just good wishes and for harmony and peace and non-violence for everybody, and that we eventually have an internal revolution of our hearts, that we also have a vision for the future. There's always these days this lack of vision. You know, if we don't have some sort of vision of the future, how can we actually get there? And that's something that we sorely lack. It seems like our governments and people, the consumerist nature of our society, it seems to be all about, you know, either creating jobs or, you know, this new device, this new technology and so forth. You know, it's all about these things and developing and stuff, but really what kind of, capitalism, as I've said, it morphs into fascism. It's inextricably linked with imperialism and war. So I don't find it's much benefit at all, really, and it's led us to an ecocidal situation. Anarcho-syndicalists seem to have interesting thoughts, and I won't go into that. But anyway, we need a vision of what we want in the future, and that's something that we probably should have had a long time ago, because the future's looking a bit grim. But we can still have a vision, and that I personally would like to see. And this probably sounds fantastical, but I'd like to see, that everything that we do, there's a litmus test, like whether it's anybody that's in any sort of power position. And it's probably not so great that people are in power, because everybody seems to abuse power. So there has to be a different structure. But also, if we want, there has to be a litmus test that everything that we decide to do, how does it affect ourselves, the planet, and other animals? There should be this litmus test, and there always should have been a litmus test for that. But unfortunately, we've completely lost our way, and now other human beings and non-human beings and the planet are the last thing on the list of things that are considered by most of society, well, a lot of society, I guess, and by people in power. So anyway, things that that we think about, we always think about people who have an absence of the ability to see and hear and speak, and all sorts of different things. We just go through a list. I won't go through it here, but anything that you can think of which benefits the world and benefits others, including animals. That's something that if we go through those things in our head and say them out loud, and we usually do it in a dark room, where it's sort of there's no distraction, and we just kind of sit there and voice these various wishes for the world. And it does change your mind, the way you think. And I try to do that kind of thing. I try to every day. I get a bit busy, but I try to keep that going. Like, for example, there are people who are causing great violence to others, that are in power. I try never to have hate for those people, because it's not helpful, and it doesn't really help my mind to have hate for those people. When one of those people die, like for example, say John McCain or somebody like that, I'll sort of say to myself, I'll just have good wishes for them. I don't really believe in, rebirth or karma particularly. But, if there was such a thing as some kind of a rebirth where people, come back, some karma thing, I'd probably say, may they never harm again, that kind of thing. But, I just have good thoughts, and sort of, because like it's a tragedy when people spend their life trying to start wars and killing people. I mean, what a sad way to spend one's precious life. There are children who are born in Yemen that don't even get to live because they die at the present time, dying of famine and disease. They don't even get to have a life, and that's because we in the West have formed alliances with a very brutal monarchy, Saudi Arabia, and we're selling arms to them, like my country, Australia, and and Canada and the US and the UK. are selling billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons and arms to Saudi Arabia, and they are committing a genocide in Yemen. Well, those children never ever get to really fulfill their life. So, you know, life is precious, and when people like John McCain and people like that, they spend their life warmongering, what a terrible waste of life. I mean, those children never got to live. And of course, every single sentient animal that is born in captivity or born in domestication circumstances so that they can be raised and fed so that they can then be killed and their bodies cut up, or that their secretions are used like dairy cows, and then their calves are taken from them and killed, like happens in the dairy industry. The male calves are taken away and killed because they're no use to the dairy industry. All that sort of thing, all those individual animals would have all been like all the, you know, they say the dogs and cats whom we live with all have individual personalities. We know that. They're sentient. They are all different individually. And each one of those animals that are mostly raised for food, the 1 trillion land and aquatic animals, all those animals have individual sort of behaviors and personalities if we ever got to know them. So each one of those animals is just like the dogs and cats whom we live with. And so they never ever, that's one individual who was raised for completely trivial reasons, and so that we could commit violence on them and kill them and then consume them. Completely unnecessary, because we don't need animal products at all to survive. So that's an individual that never ever got to be, live their life, and their lives were very short. So anyway, these are all things we can think about, and I really, really hope this coming year is a better one. When I see what happens politically, with all the wars that are starting, with all the terrible shenanigans that these various people in power are doing now, as William Bloom said, William Bloom, the journalist, historian, author, he died recently, and he said, you know, he honestly doesn't know how this is going to be stopped now. The only thing that could stop what's happening is if there's a power that's greater than the United States to stop empire. Because any country that goes against empire, that doesn't love empire, he said their time is short-lived. And that's true.
Because America, for 2 centuries, has had one basic overriding goal, and that is world domination. At least from the 1890s, if not earlier, one can say that. World domination is something which appeals to both Republicans and Democrats, or liberals or conservatives. The idea that we, the exceptional nation, have something very important to impart to the rest of the world. Our marvelous values, American exceptionalism, each party believes in that very, very strongly. There's no, they don't argue about that at all, except during a campaign debate, they'll take certain opposing views just to appear different. But in power, they have the exact same policy, world domination.
But you know, I don't know. Empires always end up falling, and US empire is falling at the moment, and empires are always the most dangerous when they're falling. And US empire is thrashing about trying to get full spectrum dominance. So who knows what will happen in the next year. Let's have good thoughts and let's do what we can in non-violent ways, whether it's yellow vest movement or spreading information by independent journalists, protests, non-violent civil disobedience, all those different things, education, helping spread information that is true, because there's so much that isn't now. All of that helps. I mean, as Gandhi said, whatever we do will be insignificant, but it's important that we do it. So let's keep that in mind, keep that thought in mind when we feel completely overwhelmed and feel like what we do is it's just not really making any difference. It's amazing how just even a small band, as Margaret Mead said, just a small group of people, the incredible sort of change that they can affect, just even a small group of people. Look at Greta Thunberg, that 15-year-old vegan from Sweden who just by sitting outside the Swedish Parliament and protesting, she's sort of started a whole international movement with children, for young children, you know, school children, against the devastating effects of climate change and the inaction of our governments to do anything. So, you know, she's just one person, a 15-year-old. And these sort of things, and even if we don't start big movements, it doesn't matter, every single little thing that happens, every drop of water on a rock eventually wears away the rock. That's really all I wanted to say. So I thank you for watching this channel. I don't know if what I talk about is, I talk about so many different topics, but I hope that you find some of them interesting, and please feel free to leave comments in the comments section. As long as they're civil, I'm happy about that. I prefer people to engage the content rather than have a go at me personally. I mean, if something I say makes you angry, then talk about that, or if something you disagree with. But as long as it's sort of done with as long as there's some research done, you know, in the before sort of making comments, that's great. Some people, they just kind of, because it's different to what they think, they immediately launch into ad hominem or misogyny, or they don't know anything about the subject, but then start to explain the subject to you even though they know nothing about it, which is a common thing that people like to do in relation to veganism. Lots of people don't even watch what I say about it or read anything I say. They just launch into this thing because they feel defensive about the fact that they're still consuming and they're still eating, wearing and using animals, and they get defensive and threatened, and then immediately start doing these knee-jerk reactions, and either launching into ad hominem attacks or explaining to me what veganism is. I think I know by now what it is. I've been vegan now for 14 years, almost 14 years, and I've done a lot of I've thought about it a lot, I've read things, so I do know what it's about. Not that I can't learn things, I learn things all the time, but I please ask people, if they're going to say things about veganism, that they at least think about what I'm saying first. So, you know, think about what I'm saying, try and erase the pre-thoughts that you have, the conditioned thoughts, the indoctrination about animals. Try and put that to one side because it's a very heavy indoctrination, and then try and approach what I'm saying with an open mind about veganism, the ethical position. That's all I ask, because if we don't do that, we're never going to be able to move forward. There's all sorts of things that are new, that's new information, that if we always hung on to old ideas. If I still hung on to old ideas, I'd still be thinking that the US was the bastion of all that was good, because that's what's presented to me all the time in Australia, through the media and through the US, and we have a lot of US content on TV and all of that sort of thing. I would still think that, and I would still think that if I didn't have independent news coming through via online, thank goodness, because the politicians still present the US like it's our ally, and that it cares about the world, or that it cares about human rights. I mean, it's a propaganda that my country has been propagandized for decades and decades and decades. My whole life I've been propagandized by that. So if it weren't for online independent journalists, I probably would still think that both parties in the US, one is the good party and one is the bad party. Like the Democratic Party is somehow the good party of diversity and stuff. These are the things that it keeps being put out to us in Australia and elsewhere. So, you know, there's all sorts of things that we're conditioned, we're indoctrinated to believe, and it's very dangerous. It helps the establishment to keep this propaganda going and to keep these indoctrinations going. And it helps, you know, industry and corporations to keep this going. So that's why, you know, when I talk about veganism, I'm hoping that people will listen to it with, you know, with an open mind and put aside our indoctrination about that animals are here for us to use, that they're our resources, that they're stupid in quotes and all of that. I hope that people will put that aside and just be open to the fact that these are other sentient beings who have a different way of being, and they don't have to be like us to have the right not to be used as property, as things. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So Happy New Year to you. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Here's Alia. She also has a bird be safe collar on. Alia loves rolling in the dirt. You might have seen her the other day in my video. She was rolling around. She loves rolling in the dirt. They're all adopted from a shelter. And so if you can adopt a sentient animal, if you can adopt a rabbit, a rat, you know, a dog or cat, these are refugees of domestication. So if you can adopt them and give them a loving, safe home, that's always a great thing too. Okay, so thanks very much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.